Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 1217, 1217, August the 11th, 2020, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we're going to talk about the latest Spygate news in the last 24 hours. Not a whole lot going on, but there are a couple things to cover. Probably won't be a very long video, but we'll go ahead and cover the information for you. So it looks like the latest drop of records from a FOIA lawsuit by the Judicial Watch. It looks like they have obtained and now released 168 pages of records from the Department of Justice, including a handwritten timeline of meetings going back to 2015. These are connected to Peter's Been Stroking Us and Loose Lisa Page, as well as Christopher Steele and Confusion GPS. There's also a list of records that the DOJ sent to Congress related to their investigation into the FISA warrants involving the Clinton-funded dossier. These new docs basically show that the Obama FBI and DOJ had a close working relationship with Confusion GPS and Christopher Steele. Peter's Been Stroking Us and Loose Lisa Page's names are connected to meetings and phone calls in the UK and DC. Now, this is a pretty new story. I mean, I think it just actually got up on the Judicial Watch website yesterday. So Tom Fitton has not really had a chance to go out and do any interviews or do a video and break this down and tell us what it all means. If you go to the webpage, or at least when I looked at it, it just gives kind of a brief overview of what they received and a general description of what they received. And then there's, of course, a link, as there always is, with Judicial Watch to a PDF where you can actually read these documents for yourself. So if you click on them, it's kind of hard to make out, again, unless you're used to reading this type of stuff and you know the jargon and you understand what you're reading. It's a little confusing, so I don't know that I could get that much out of it. But what I did get out of it, and I think what surprised me the most, is I wasn't surprised that there was communications and documents, records going back to 2015, because we know, of course, that Confusion GPS actually brought Nellie Orr in the fall of 2015. We believe that to be somewhere around October of 2015, according to Bruce Orr in his testimony. But what surprises me, and again, we'll need Tom Fitton to do a video and elaborate on this a little bit, because, you know, the jargon, you know, they use a lot of FBI notes, they use a lot of shorthand. And so, you know, a lot of shorthand, abbreviations, and just like dates. And then there's redacted names. So it's a little confusing to understand. But as I was reading through that, I was noticing some of these dates. And these dates are not just from the fall of October 2015. There are notes and things in there from the fall of 2015, that October, November, December period. But there are also things in there that I saw as far back as February of 2015. And so that surprised me a little bit to see that some of this, and I don't know exactly what I was looking at. I don't know what it was that was going on in February of 2015 as far as all this is concerned, because it's so abbreviated in shorthand and jargon that I really didn't understand exactly what I was looking at. But I was certainly noticing the dates of these communications, and I'm not sure who they were to and from. But clearly they're obviously around Strzok, Page, Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele. Now, it doesn't surprise me, or shouldn't surprise any of us, that there are some communications between Christopher Steele and Confusion GPS in 2015, because of course we know that Steele and Confusion GPS, you know, had a relationship for somewhere in the 7-8 year range, somewhere in that range. As far as Strzok and Page and Steele and Confusion GPS, that the Strzok and Page element is a totally different thing, and I'm not sure, again, because the documents were just published. We really haven't had, Tom Fitton hasn't had a chance to come out and sort of explain exactly what all that is, and it's hard to make out, you know, because it's not like you're reading emails or text and you can clearly see the to and the from and what they're talking about. These are very coded language, very brief, like notes and things. So it's a little confusing, but the dates certainly stood out to me, and I'm not sure who these communications were between. But it's just more evidence that, just as we've suspected all along, that these things go back much farther than just the summer of 2016. Keep in mind, the FBI has continued all of them. Peter's been stroking us, Lisa Page, McCabe, Comey, the whole crew have all stuck to this date of July 31st of 2016 being the date when they first started investigating, the Trump campaign based on the conversation between Papadopoulos and Downer. Now we know that's total BS. We know that that's not really the reason. That's the excuse they used. It was the Christopher Steele stuff that they were really working from, but it was they couldn't use it. So and apparently they did try to use that to get a warrant. They tried to use something to get a warrant on Papadopoulos, but it was shot down. We just learned that a couple of weeks ago, prior to the Carter Page FISA. So again, it doesn't surprise me, shouldn't surprise anyone, that this relationship was going on, or what the FBI was doing. They were doing things before July of 2016. Exactly under what umbrella, I'm not sure. Remember, Peter's been stroking us was also involved in CIA. I think Peter's been stroking us is also CIA, and he had this other group that he was working with, which involved Brennan and some people on the intelligence side and some other agencies, this 6-agency task force. And that began back in the spring, late March, early April of 2016. We still haven't really heard very much about that. And I'm hoping that Durham will maybe get a little deeper into that, because I think if there was FBI involvement, particularly by Peter's been stroking us, it probably would have occurred as part of that 6-agency task force, because that stuff was going on in the spring of 2016. So the FBI continues to stick to this summer, July 31st, 2016, being when they first began investigating the Trump campaign. They'll say they were investigating Papadopoulos, but we know that Trump was the target. But as far as and of course, it wouldn't surprise me to know that there's communication between Steele and Fusion GPS. They have this relationship already, but it's when the FBI came into play here, and that's what's not clear to me from reading what I saw on Judicial Watch. I'm not sure if it's telling us that Strzok and Page were involved with Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, prior to July 31st. That's not entirely clear. But if that is what these documents are saying, then that's a big, big problem, because they are here again as another set of lies by, under oath, testified under oath, McCabe, Strzok, Comey, Lisa Page, all testified under oath, and I believe even Brennan under oath, that it wasn't until summer, July of 2016, when they actually began investigating. They've stuck to their guns on that. So if there was something going on with Ben Stroking Us and Page, with Confusion GPS and Christopher Steele prior to July, then it probably would have been under the umbrella of the 6-agency task force or multi-agency task force. It's been called many things, but we know it existed. So that is not entirely clear, and that would obviously provide the cover. It would be dishonest, it would be lying still, but it would be providing cover for Peter's been stroking us. He can say, oh yeah, I was telling the truth when I said that we didn't launch the investigation, meaning we, the FBI, didn't launch an investigation until July 31st, 2016. Oh, but now I was working with Brennan in this multi-agency task force back early in the spring of 2016, but not as an FBI agent. Not as an FBI agent, no, as a CIA asset for I was an FBI asset for the CIA, but not officially an investigation by the FBI. I mean, he might try to pull something like that. I'm not really sure. We're going to need more information, and I hope that hope Judicial Watch, hope Tom Fitton does a video on this in the next day or so and explains this, because the jargon, the the abbreviations, the acronyms, and all these things are, unless you know that language, it's kind of like reading gibberish. So not much I could learn from it, but you can certainly go over to Judicial Watch website yourself, and you can take a look at the general outline, which is fairly easy to understand, which is mostly what I just read to you right here. But looking at the PDF, I wasn't able to make heads nor tails of much of that, other than the dates jumping out at me, how far back the dates went into 2015. Not just the end of 2015. There are dates there of things that obviously matter that are early 2016, February. I saw 2 or 3 listings there, February 2016, something was happening in February 2016. And this covers, it does say there are sometimes like phone call, meeting, or something like that. It'll designate whether it was a phone call, a meeting, or what have you. So there's a lot to be kind of fleshed out there. I assume Judicial Watch is working on that now, trying to kind of get a handle on exactly what they've got. So I would expect something more on that in the next day or so. As far as the FBI and the DOJ having a close working relationship with Fusion GPS and Steele, well, I mean, you can even take it one step farther. We learned not too long ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, that Obama was using Confusion GPS. He was using their services in the campaign against Mitt Romney. So Obama, it wasn't just the rotten Reverend Clinton who used Confusion GPS. Obama used Confusion GPS in his campaign against Romney. And we also know that Obama made a relatively large payment to Perkins Coie in the fall of 2016. Somewhere around September, October of 2016, Obama made a payment that was close to $1 million. It was like $900,000. So you have to ask, why was Obama paying Confusion GPS $900,000 in October of 2016? What were they doing for Obama? I mean, he was not running for president. He was going to be leaving. So why did he need legal services from Perkins Coie to the tune of $900,000? No one's ever asked that question, and someone should ask that question. As far as this relationship between the DOJ, the FBI, and Christopher Steele, well, we know about that because of the FIFA soccer thing, and it appears that there may have been other things going on with Steele. We know that Steele has certainly provided over 100 reports to the U.S. State Department in the years like 2015, 2016, 2017. 2014, 15, 16. We know that Steele was providing reports regarding Russia and Ukraine to the State Department that were going directly to Victoria Nuland. So she was already familiar with Steele's work. She had about 100 of his memos passed through her hands. So we know that Christopher Steele has had a relatively long relationship with the FBI, going back to the FIFA soccer scandal, maybe other things. We know that he's had this pretty long relationship with Bruce Orr, around 10 years. And that's how he kind of also met Bruce Orr, through that same thing. Some other corruption cases. And of course we know that Steele and Fusion GPS had a relationship. I guess the relationship that I'm interested in, of these 4 characters, FBI, DOJ, Fusion GPS, and Steele, and what it says on Judicial Watch's website is the new documents show that the Obama FBI and DOJ had a close working relationship with Fusion GPS and Steele. Okay, so now it's the Fusion GPS relationship that makes me curious, because I wasn't necessarily aware of a relationship between FBI, DOJ, and Confusion GPS. We know about the relationship with Steele. We know about Steele's relationship with Confusion GPS and Glenn Simpson. We know about Steele's relationship with Bruce Orr. We know about all that. But what we didn't know, or what I didn't know, was that there was a relationship between the FBI, the DOJ, and Confusion GPS. That would be something new. Now we know Confusion GPS has in the past been a contractor for the CIA, and that Glenn Simpson has had connections to the CIA. He's been involved in some of their open source research work. He clearly has some sort of relationship with the CIA. He clearly is a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, probably had sources that he used who were CIA. But as in an official capacity regarding investigations or having a regular relationship, I'm really surprised that we would find out that the FBI and DOJ have some kind of a relationship with Confusion GPS, because they are a highly partisan operation which primarily focuses on running smear campaigns against a political party. They're not an objective group, really. So I think we need to know more about what we're talking about. And is this what he's talking about on the Judicial Watch website, suggesting that there's FBI, DOJ, Fusion GPS, Steele relationship going back to early 2015? I mean, is that what this is telling us? I'm not 100% sure whether we're talking about some sort of just a relationship, a general relationship that has existed, or whether we're talking about specific things about the 2016 election, Crossfire Hurricane, all the other things going on, and there being some sort of a communications going back to early 2015 as around the Crossfire Hurricane, the Trump campaign, the election 2016, any of that. That is not made entirely clear, and that's essentially what we would need to know. The general background information about these relationships is not, something that would be really surprising, because again, we've known about the relationship between Steele and the U.S. State Department, Steele and the FBI. The DOJ, I'm not so sure about. And of course, we would know about Fusion GPS and Steele, and Fusion GPS and, other political people like the Clinton campaign, the Obama campaign in 2012. Obviously having these relationships with Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie. We know that Fusion GPS, Glenn Simpson's wife, went to the White House in April, and a week later, Fusion GPS gets the contract through Perkins Coie representing the Clinton campaign, but she went to the Obama White House the week before. So is there a connection between her visit to the White House in April, and then a week later, they're hired by, Fusion GPS is hired by Perkins Coie on behalf of the Clinton campaign? And did that visit to the White House by Mary Jacoby have anything to do with that? Because Obama is the president at that time. It's the Obama administration. Clinton's gone. She's a private citizen running for office. She had already left her position as Secretary of State. So I think that these are questions that need to be answered. And again, there's so many questions, literally thousands and thousands of questions that you could just run through on these, relationships and what they might mean. And it's hard to imagine that Durham is going to be able to answer every single minute question that we would all have. I think he's focused on other things, but these are questions I would someday like to have the answer to. Maybe someday we will get the answers to these questions. I just don't know. Steele and Page's names are connected to meetings and phone calls in the UK and DC. Again, what is the time frame? What are the nature of those calls? I mean, it's a little troublesome, but again, just having meetings or phone calls with people in the UK and DC is not in itself a major deal. It's what was it about? Why are they having these phone calls and meetings? What were they about? Those are the questions that need to be answered. So hopefully we will hear from Tom Fitton in the next day or two, and he'll be able to expand on this a little more, and we'll maybe understand more about exactly what this new document release is all about. But you might want to go take a look at Judicial Watch's website. It's right there on the tab on your upper right hand corner. Just click on it, and you can read it for yourself. Now, we also learned yesterday that Ron Johnson has subpoenaed Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray for all documents related to the Bureau's counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign, the 2016 Trump campaign. Now, this subpoena was issued on August the 6th. And so what this is that Johnson's frustrated, like everyone else who's dealt with Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray. The guy just simply covers up. I wish he never would have been put in that position. I think he should be fired. I mean, I don't know why Barr continues to have any confidence in him. There's something going on there that I do not understand. But what this is telling us is that Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray must appear before the HSGAC committee. That's Ron Johnson's, the Joint Committee, Government Affairs and Homeland Security Committee combined. That he must appear before that committee, No Shit Sherlock Ray, must appear before that committee by August the 20th with all the documents related to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. But that's not all. There's also documents that Johnson's requested that are relative to Ukraine and the Bidens and Burisma and all that stuff. So there are document requests on that as well. So if you take this literally as the story is reporting it, that means that Christopher Wray would need to physically come before Johnson's committee on the 20th of August or before, and he would need to have in his possession all those documents. Now, he'd probably have to bring in a wagon or something, because I assume we're talking about tens of thousands of pages of documents, would be my guess. Because when you say I want all the documents, well, that's a hell of a lot of documents. And so that is the first part of this story with Ron Johnson and the subpoena. And again, the fact that he had to go to the point of getting a subpoena tells you that he's very frustrated with No Shit Sherlock Ray, who simply has not been producing the documents. He hasn't been producing for anyone else either. So it shouldn't have surprised Johnson. I mean, he didn't wait very long to pull the trigger, but it appears that this subpoena was actually issued on August the 6th. In other words, he gave Ray 2 weeks to come up with all these documents and show up in the hearing. We will see if that happens. It should happen. We will see. But there's even more going on. There was also a subpoena issued to, on the same day, Jonathan Weiner from the State Department, who we know was a contact, sort of an intermediary between Steele and Newland. Steele in the State Department. He was the one who arranged the meeting with Kvalik. He also was the one who was intermediary between the Cody Shearer dossier and Steele, which found its way into the dossier, found its way into the hands of Victoria Newland, which she sent it back to the FBI. That's where they got it. That's one of the ways. So the FBI got it both from Steele and from Newland on the kickback. And apparently, from what they're saying here, Jonathan Weiner has not yet responded as to whether or not he is going to answer the subpoena. So Johnson has said that if he doesn't hear from Weiner by the end of the week, he is going to have the U.S. Marshals deliver that subpoena to him. Johnson is particularly interested in Jonathan Weiner, his connections with Steele, specifically with Steele, but also his sort of intermediary actions, acting as this intermediary constantly between Shearer, Steele, Newland, the State Department, the FBI. I mean, he's kind of like this all-purpose intermediary. He's obviously was in the Clinton-Kerry State Department. He goes back a long way in the State Department. He's also in that cabal of Cody Shearer, Blumenthal, Talbot. He's in that same group. We know that he's a shady character. Basically, we know that. So we will wait and see what comes out of that. The next thing is people again talking a lot about John Brennan, and again, as I said yesterday, I don't believe the story that was put out by public broadcasting. I don't believe the story that Brennan is not a target. I'm not sure where that came from. I assume someone within Brennan himself, or one of his, spokesperson or lawyer or somebody. No one else got that story. Not the New York Times, not the Washington Post, not NBC, ABC, Fox. No one else got that story. It was just kind of came out of public broadcasting, and then it was perpetuated by other people repeating on reporting the story, but no one else had their own independent source. Everyone is sourcing the original source, public broadcasting, and I don't have a lot of faith in them. And I think there's something going on here. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound like, where would they get that information? That's not something that the Durham investigation would even bring up, even if it were true. The Durham investigation wouldn't, Durham or anyone on his team would never, call up, public broadcasting and say, yeah, I just want to let you know that we're calling him Brennan, but he's not a target. I mean, that didn't happen. So the State Department has not commented on it. Durham investigation has not commented on it. DOJ not commented on it. Nobody's commented on it. So I don't think there's much credibility to that story. But, as far as Brennan is concerned, and a lot of people say, well, Brennan lied to Congress. Well, yes, he did. He's lied to Congress many times, not just in this matter, but in previous matters as well. He's a compulsive liar. So that shouldn't surprise anybody. He's a spook. That's what these guys do. They get paid to lie. And so I guess the issue that I would most focus on if I were Durham and I'm talking to Brennan, in addition to just all the things on the peripheral, Crossfire Hurricane, his involvement, his contacting Harry Reid, his pushing it from that angle, and all that sort of stuff certainly needs to be vetted. But I think the big problem that John Brennan has when he sits down with Durham is the fact that it's in regards to the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, which essentially was a dossier into itself that was really the predicate for launching the Mueller investigation. Crossfire Hurricane was pretty much dead and dying at that point. It had all been blown up. And so that's when the ICA pops up. Obama orders Comey, Brennan, and Clapper to produce this ICA for him. And it's in this ICA where the argument is made that Putin was working to help help Trump and hurt Hillary. That is specifically the claim made, the dominant claim made in the ICA, which is what was to justify everything that happened after that, including the Mueller investigation. It was a dossier into itself. Now, here's the problem that Mr. Potato Head has. When he testified in front of Congress, he said that the dossier was not part of the corpus of intelligence. And in the ICA, the dossier was only put in as an attachment, meaning they didn't have high confidence in it. But Brennan made the argument in the main body of the ICA. It was the main body. The main argument they made was that Putin was trying to help Trump and hurt Clinton. And so the problem that Mr. Potato Head has here is that there is no other evidence that information came from anywhere other than the dossier. The dossier made that claim. So you got Brennan saying we didn't use the dossier, it wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence for the ICA, but the claim made in the ICA that Putin was trying to help Trump and hurt Clinton, that came from the dossier. And the problem that Brennan's going to have is when Durham says, okay, now you said the dossier wasn't part of the corpus of your intelligence for the ICA. So if it wasn't, and we know that they made the claim in the dossier that this is what was going on, but if you're saying that that wasn't part of the corpus of the intelligence that was used for the ICA, which is making the claim that Putin is helping Trump and hurting Clinton, then where is the evidence, the information, the intelligence, whatever you want to call it, where is it that justified making that claim in the ICA if it wasn't the dossier? Because you're saying it wasn't the dossier. You're saying that's not where you got that. So at this time, with everything that's been released, the Horowitz report and everything else, we have never heard of a single other source making that claim other than the so-called Steele dossier. So Brennan can't have it both ways. He can't put that in the ICA in the main body. The main driving point of the ICA is that that Putin's helping Trump and hurting Clinton. You can't say that in the main body of the ICA unless you have some evidence to back it up. And where is that evidence? As far as we know, the only evidence we've seen where that claim is made is in the dossier. And I think that's where Brennan gets tripped up here, because I'm not aware of it. If you're aware of it, please let me know in the comment section. Tell me where I can go to see this other information that's making that claim, because I'm not aware of any other information that was making that claim. Only the dossier. But if Brennan says it wasn't the dossier, it wasn't part of the corpus of intelligence, then what was it? Where was it? Where did that come from? And I think that that's where Durham is going to have John Brennan, assuming, again, Brennan may say he's going to talk to Durham, but we don't know that to be true. Or he may show up and just plead the fifth. Or he just may not answer certain questions. I mean, we had this story about 2 weeks ago that we learned that Brennan lost his security clearance. And the reason we know that is because he tried to access his personal files and records. Now, why did Mr. Potato Head want to, about 2 weeks ago, access his files and records? Well, it's because he doesn't want to perjure himself when he sits down with Durham. And so he wanted to know what Durham knows, because we know that Durham did get Brennan's schedule, his notes, meeting notes, emails, and various other things. So Durham has got a lot of Brennan's information. Now, Brennan probably wants to know what Durham got, and he probably wants to refresh his own memory on exactly what might be there, so he doesn't perjure himself or trip himself up or say something that can be proven false, a statement that can be proven false based on information that Durham has obtained by doing this search on Brennan. So this is the reason. I mean, we were given the reason. Well, Brennan's writing a book, and so because he's writing a book, he needs to access his notes and stuff. I think the reason that these guys are all talking about writing books we'll probably never see, it's not because they're writing a book. It's the excuse that they're using is that they're writing a book. What they really want is to get access to their notes and private records and things, because their attorneys are probably saying, do you know, did you say this? Do you know, can you be 100% sure what, So they want this information because they want to know what Durham's got. They also want to make sure they don't perjure themselves. They want to know exactly what they may have said specifically or whatever, what may be in the records. That's why they want these records, not because they're writing books, but because they don't want to perjure themselves, and they want to know, they want to see these records themselves to refresh their memory on what they may have said. So I think that that's pretty clear. So I think that's something that will be, the thing to watch. And again, I don't really believe the story put out by public broadcasting. I don't think Durham or his investigators would call in Brennan just to cover some technical issues or something. I don't buy it. Now, when we talked about yesterday, we talked about who this FBI agent was who briefed the Senate Intelligence Committee and, of course, lied to them. And, of course, we know the Senate Intelligence Committee didn't mind being lied to because they were playing along with the FBI. They knew they were going to be lied to, and they were all in on it because they were working together and always had been, because the FBI was likely involved in that leak by James Wolfe to his girlfriend to get the dossier released. I think the FBI was probably involved in that, working with the corrupt people in the Senate Intelligence Committee to make that happen. So they had to cover all that up. I think that that's maybe something that will also be exposed. But I said that I was 99% sure that McCabe would have been the person probably giving that briefing, and now we have Maria Bartiromo coming out yesterday morning and confirming that it was Andy McCabe who in fact gave that false briefing to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And it was just another lie by McCabe. You can expect he will be one of the people indicted on multiple counts. Also had someone in the comments section wondering about Halper's handler. Well, there's two, really. One of Halper's handlers at the FBI, the main handler, I think, for Halper at the FBI was Stephen Soma. Soma, S-O-M-M-A. But he also appeared to have been working under, and I don't know if she was his handler, but he was working with or under this honeypot that was thrown at Papagalopoulos named Azra Turk. Azra Turk, obviously not her real name, but a name that she was using. So you could say, so we know Soma was his handler, but Azra Turk also had some role to play, and I assume she was over Halper. And I did go take a look at Stephen Schraggy's Twitter, and it is clean, my friends. Absolutely clean. There's not a single thing there. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate, assuming there's some news. Thank you. Bye.